Hey, John, we were talking earlier offline about morning rituals and so on. You a big coffee enthusiast?
I am. I enjoy a good cup of coffee. Gets me going in the morning, but I always start off with a cup of black tea first. Then
Black,
I
why
switch over.
black tea first?
It's got guarana in it. It's a kind of a natural stimulant, and it's got health benefits. And that way probably cuts down and I don't drink as much coffee. So I enjoy the tea and then I enjoy the coffee. I'm good for about 2 cups of coffee in the morning.
Oh, that's good. I know a lot of times that do you doctor it up when you do it, or you just have
No,
it
just a
black
little almond milk only. Just a little
almond milk
splash
only? Oh, you're a little healthy with that tea or tea and coffee, right?
for sure.
What else do you do for a morning routine? Salespeople always are notorious for morning routines.
Well, I would say over my last 30 years of selling, today I listen to motivational, inspirational, or product knowledge. I've got about a 30-minute commute into town to West Sacramento where I work. And so what I do is I just listen to something that is going to help me. Before, in my 20s, it was 3 or 4 songs in a row that I played all the time. So I had the ritual get in, 3 songs that got me motivated, jacked up, ready to go for work. And that was usually around 7:15, 7:30 when I hit the car. Today, it's more, I still enjoy the music, but I use the music at home. But now it's more about what information I can get inside of me to help me better prepare for the day.
Yeah, and no, that's good to hear. I know that where I first met you, during the Toastmasters time, and for the group that's listening, Toastmasters is all about leadership and teaching you how to speak in public. And a lot of your speeches that you gave early on were very motivational, very inspirational. So I thought to myself, I know this guy must be in sales of some sort. And the more I got to know you, right,
Yeah.
that part of you came out. And I wondered to myself, I said, man, this guy is full of confidence, man. This guy is a good speaker. I mean, what brought you to Toastmasters? I mean, you already had a lot of the tools there on your tool belt.
I was working with a gentleman. We were presenting once a month, and Jim was a great guy. He bounced across the stage and he was fanatic, but over the course of the next 2 or 3 months working with him, Jim got better and better. And I'd always heard about Toastmasters, but never really made the time. So after one of the meetings, I walked to him, I said, Jim, you're incredible now. What have you been doing? He said, I joined Toastmasters. That next week I found a club and I joined. That was over 12 years ago. And what I saw in him was just he fine-tuned. He already had a great story to tell, but the way he did it was impressive. And that's what I wanted to learn. I wanted to learn to be able to tell a story, give a speech, do it in a way that you felt comfortable, that came across where people could understand it, and your delivery was good. And Jim did that. So 12 years later, Toastmasters, still involved in it, enjoy it every day. And we meet early. We meet at 6:15, but we're usually there. Well, you're always the first one there, but I usually get there around 5:30, 5:35, and you already got the room set up. So we appreciate that about you, Pat.
Yeah, anybody that it must say something about people that, especially salespeople, can get up at 6:15 on a Tuesday and say, "Hey, I want to give a speech or talk about my career in front of people." So that's kind of amazing. Let's go back to something about this your illustrious sales career that you've had. I mean, you've had a lot of different jobs in sales. I mean, sold mattresses, you sold cars, and currently we'll get to the RV portion of it. You're selling RVs now for recreational vehicles. You sold hair products. I mean, why all the different kind of jobs? What did that bring to you?
Well, there are different stages. I think we all grow and we develop. When I was in high school, I worked for a tire company. It was owned by an oil company. And the guys used to say, hey, for every customer you bring me, I'll give you $1. And so I'd go out to the gas stations because it was an oil company. So we had gas stations in front. Then we had a drive-through lube, did drive-through, and then they had a 4-tire base. So I'd just go out there and wash people's windshields, started talking to folks, check the air pressure, bring them there. And at the end of the week, I'd have $5 or $6, $7, $8 extra. And that was a junior in high school that went into the gas tank. But I kind of got a little taste of what it was like to be commission sales. I stayed with that company until I was 24. I went through the ranks and became a manager of one of the most successful retail operations we had was in Chico. We did over $1 million a month in sales. I was paid a percentage of half of the total sales, excluding the gasoline. But my base salary never changed. It was always $900 a month. And I was, about that time I was making around $3,000 a month in total commissions. But I realized there was more out there, and that started me in the path of personal growth. So for me, during those early 80s, it was Zig Ziglar. I was a fan of his. And back in those days, I actually would go to the seminar. So I flew to Dallas, Texas, was there at the Born to Win seminar with Zig. And it was kind of, for that time, it was life-changing realizing, as a kid in Chico, California, that I could really experience some other things. So that gave me wheels, tires, gas, handling, employees issues. We had 21 employees. We opened up at 6. We stayed up until 10, different parts, 3 different parts in one. So it was just a little business, a little sales, and a little management.
Yeah.
So it was kind of fun.
And for those who don't know, Northern California, that's a little north of Sacramento, Chico, and not a hustling, bustling city, right, Chico?
No, it's grown since the days I came to Sacramento, but yeah, and it was like anything else. It was a safe place to grow up as a kid. We rode our bikes everywhere. We just had to be home by dark.
Did you ever imagine getting into sales though? I mean, what was the turning point for you?
I can tell you what it was. It was when I was dating a hairdresser, and she said, "Have you ever been to San Francisco?" And I said, "No, I'd never been there." I was 23 years old.
It's only like 90 miles west of you, right?
Yeah. Well, about 3-hour drive, right? So yeah. I went and I walked into something that was out of a Hollywood production, and I thought, I want to be here. I want to do this. So the motivation was, she said, well, there's a company over there that's fairly new. They're looking for some salespeople. You'd have to go in salons and sell our product. So I went over there and talked to the guys, and they said, hey, we have 5 products. We don't test on animals. I didn't know what that meant. We don't use any animal byproducts. I didn't know what that meant. They were recycling. Our products are recyclable. So I said, okay, well, what do I got to do? And they said, well, you got to go to the salons in your area and get them to carry our product. And I said, okay, well, what kind of pay will it be? And they said, we'll guarantee what you have you're making now for 3 months in your commission only. So I said, I'm in. I gave my company 30-day notice. I didn't think they would say goodbye. I thought they would do something. At the end of the 30 days, they came in, escorted me outside, shook my hand, said, best of luck to you. And I started working for a startup haircut company called Paul Mitchell. And I told my father, and my father says, John, you don't have a college education. I had 2 years of Butte College. I couldn't get into CHP Academy because my left eye is not correct to division requirements. I said, Dad, they're guaranteeing me for 90 days, 3 months, the same thing I'd been working for the oil company for nearly 7 years, and they weren't going to give me a pay. They said I was maxed out. He said, I'm going to have a son that sells hairspray and lipstick. My first check was a little over $4,000. I made a copy. I said, not bad for hairspray and lipstick. And my dad never said a word, but it changed my life because I thought maybe I was going to be stuck in Chico pumping gas for the rest of my life. And sales opportunity, and I got into that industry at the right time. Retailing and salon grew, whether it was Paul Mitchell, where it was Aveda, where it was Joico Biolage, and it took me all over the United States, and it changed my life.
Did your dad say, hey, listen, any job openings that where you're working? No.
I got to tell you, we were the family that prayed twice a year at Thanksgiving and Easter. And then my other brothers had a brother who was a year younger than myself, and he was in the military. My other brother's like 5 years younger than myself, and he was going to Berkeley, graduating as an engineer. My youngest brother was in medical school, right? And so he'd go through and he goes, and my oldest son, well, he's an A number 1 peddler. And my brother says, are you upset? I said, no. He said, A number 1. To him, being a civil engineer and a Berkeley graduate, he didn't think you could make a living, as he said, peddling products.
Right.
But that's that generation, right? We understand why I kind of said that selling is a noble profession, because if we don't sell one item, nothing happens, right? And so it takes somebody who have the courage. And what I like of being around salespeople is that we have the courage. They call it today failing forward, right? Never be afraid to make something. And if you're a good salesperson, you learn. And I never reinvent. If I go somewhere and they say, this is our sales process, I learn it. I become a master at it. And then I learn the vernacular of the industry, whatever the terminology that we use. But it comes back to, as Pat, you and I was talking about it, the basic fundamentals.
Right.
Meet and greet, make a friend, follow through, do what you say you're going to do. Make sure you present yourself the best way. Have a mental checklist every day. You're going to go into a call. What are you going to do today? It's just a plan. So the selling different products was my way of, I have a friend who's a contractor, and he said, one thing I like about being a contractor is I never stay on the same job. We move from job to job to job. Well, we don't call that job hopping because he stays in the same profession, but he takes his profession to another job site. That's kind of how I looked at it, right? So once I sold my business when I opened it, and we'll get into that later, but I was out of that industry, a non-compete clause and a consulting agreement. So I had to go find something else. So it led me into a different path of selling different items.
Yeah. And I like the fact, that you said, sales is a noble career. A lot of times, they equate salespeople below sharks and lawyers and attorneys, right?
Right.
And but it is a very novel and a noble profession to be in. And you talked about, things that kept you alive. I think the allure of salespeople is that they're always, they're on the cutting edge. They're worrying how much money they can make, which is good. How much, because one of your first things you ask the guy is how much can I make here? Because you want something, the end game, the carrot, in front of you. And also that, it's always going from customer to customer to customer. And in sales, you can either sell computers, you can sell cars, you can sell whatever, but it's always a customer facing type experience that you have. And you have to have those skills, the enthusiasm. You have to have the being positive. And you've always in your speeches talked about positivity, how important that is. You and I talked offline about where you were in sales at first, and then you took a jump into ownership. Talk about that, because that's pretty interesting, because you learned some pretty valuable lessons there, didn't you?
Yeah. So working for Paul Mitchell and the distributor that had it, I built 4 territories in 2 states. And that spanned about 9 years. And what happened was every time I went to another territory, they don't remember me as starting as the new guy who didn't know anything. I became a little more experienced. So back then we called it reinventing yourself. But what I did was after that, it came to where I called them distributors. So we had the salons that were selling the products and the distributors who had the salespeople that called them the salons. So now I'm working with salespeople. And then I would go meet with salon owners or distributors, and they would complain that the product wasn't selling. I go, we just did $300 million, but not here because you don't have any product, or your salespeople aren't talking about it, whatever it was. So out of frustration, when I covered the West Coast, and then out of frustration, I would call my dad, and my dad would say, John, this country was built on, if you have a better idea, put your money where your mouth is. So he said that to me so many times. Out of frustration, I'd go back, and I was going to build a business that was going to be focused on salon business and retail. I would design it like this. So in 1994, I finally made the decision that I was going to open up a beauty supply salon. There was no word hybrid yet. And there was no Ultas around.
And you also said it was a very female dominated industry, correct?
Yeah. So fortunately, I had a mom who was a 4th grade school teacher. I was the oldest of 4 boys. We did everything. 5th grade, you got a time to do your laundry. You set the table, you help clean up. My mom used to say, I don't want you to think it's a woman's job, nor do I want you to be dependent. So when I got into the female driven industry, I was comfortable taking orders from a boss. My first sales manager, she was a tough cookie, but I got along with her great. There couldn't be anybody tougher than my mother, right? She was a 4th grade school teacher, one of 11, had 5 older brothers. And she would whisper in our ears as we're growing up, you better be on your best behavior, because I'm not raising any punky ass boys. And she would whisper in our ear. And so you knew when that was happening, you better be on your best behavior. So how that translated later in life is nobody could be as tough as my mother was to us.
Yeah. Thank God for moms, right?
Exactly. And she's doing great today. She's 80 and she's still just as tough as she was back then. So when I got into the industry, I had no issues with that. I had to learn, right? Somebody said to me, John, you don't know the difference between a semi-permanent hair color and a permanent hair color, or an acid wave or an alkaline wave. And I didn't. And it took me a good couple of years. Plus, I wasn't either a barber, stylist, or a hairdresser. I was one of the first guys that were going to come in and be more of a business coach, right? Teach salons how to be more profitable. They could cut hair, but where could be another a revenue generating stream? And that was retail. So retail was born in the mid 80s. And then by the early 90s, I'd opened my business, and I didn't call myself a beauty supply. It was a full service salon that had retail products. And we were able at that time to carry a lot of the products that you can't carry today, like Aveda and Paul Mitchell. And then we just went from 4,000 square feet. The goal was 10. And thankfully, the owner of the strip center where I opened up said, John, why don't you show me what you can do with 4,000 square feet? And then maybe we can talk about 10 down the road. And I'll tell you why that was a blessing. You had to learn how to operate 4,000 square feet. I didn't have any, I begged, borrowed, and raised 300 grand and opened the doors 9 months later and didn't have zero cash flow. So you stand there every day and you got to pay your bills and you got to make things happen. And then in 99, we expanded to 10,000 square feet, and I borrowed money from US Bank. But it was all those things that people said you couldn't do. 94 was the worst economy in 30 years. My dad sent me a book called Bankruptcy 1994. It was the end of the United States. In 1999, when we did the remodel, it was Y2K. Oh no, the end of the world's coming.
Yeah, end of the world. Exactly.
So it's never the end of the world. I hate to tell the doom and gloomers, the sky's not falling. I've lived long enough to live through all that stuff, and we make it because we're determined. And I just think after all those years in selling, the things I tell young salespeople that are new in the profession, it's the things you never say that you regret. And we talked about this morning. It's not what you say, it's how you say it. So don't be afraid to ask for that order. Don't be afraid to ask, what am I missing? Don't be afraid how I can earn your business.
Do you think a lot of salespeople, younger salespeople, or even salespeople in general, don't ever ask for the sale?
They ask once. So now I do internet sales for an RV company, and I made a poster that's right above my phone that talks about all the different, how many times it takes to get a sell. And you'll get an 80% yes if you ask over 5 times, but you got to get to 5, and you got to have the courage to do it to 5, and you got to find 5 different ways to ask to do the business, and you got to stay in the pocket. And when you're younger and you don't have the experience, you take that stuff personally, right? I always tell people, I don't care what it is. It's a numbers game. You got to ask, you got to go through, you got to meet and greet, you got to shake hands. You got to always remember to do your first impression, your best impression. Right? You got to listen, right? You got to, sometimes you learn that some objections don't need an answer. They just need a nod or ignored or pass by. Always agree with the customer. Price is too high. Yeah, I know it's high. It's high everywhere, right? My grandfather used to say, good things are seldom cheap and cheap things are seldom good. I use that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
You get some little stories. You create your own repertoire. You practice. You listen to positive stuff all day long in the car or when you have some chance, because it's selling allowed. I always say this, a C+ student to make an A wage.
Yeah. The point I've really liked when you were talking about this earlier is that you're always on as a salesperson. You're never off. Like you say, if you got spare time from one appointment to the other, you're listening to something positive, or you're listening or learning or reading, doing podcasts or listening to podcasts, whatever it takes you to continue to be in the moment. Because a lot of times, I mean, we've all done this in our career before. I know I have many, many times. I talk about when I teach our career courses, is that, I love to wing it sometimes. I've had a lot of experience in sales for 30 plus years, and I can wing this today, but you really can't, because those are the moments that you lose, and the customer detects that when you just come in to wing it. So what's your price look like today? Or, why are you here today? What's your purpose here? And you kind of just wing it, and they go, my time's valuable. I don't have time to just sit here and shoot the breeze with you. I want to know what's in it for me. Right. And I like the fact that, you say you prepare yourself from call to call. I want to get into the RV sales thing in a second here, but I want to go back to something you said about, your dad, the education portion of it. You, not only when you were selling hair products and you own your own business, you were the CFO, you were the general manager, you were the financial, you were everything in that organization, all without a formal degree. So there are people that are very successful in this world. Not to say anything about college. College is very important for a lot of people. But as we were growing up, it was very important, but not totally necessary. If you had the drive and the passion, right? And that's 2 things I see in you all the time. Anytime I'm with you, it's always drive and passion. So that's a good thing. I want to skip forward to the sales between cars. I love car sales. I love just the whole fact behind it. It's not a very easy job. There, you're selling, anywhere between $50,000, $60,000, whatever an average car is today. It's probably much higher than that. And RVs, we were talking about, may have a ring up to, $200,000 to $300,000, right? What type of customer buys an RV, and what kind of customer buys a car? Are they the same?
No, well, they are, and somewhat. But I think what you learn after having 20, 25 years in the sales profession is that there's never a shortage of money. There's never a shortage. So something that you see, when I first walked there, I thought, that RV's $450,000. That's more than I paid for my first house, right? However, the person who wants that is very comfortable with writing a check for it or putting $200,000 and having their payments $1,600 a month for the next 20 years, because that's what you finance for, is 20 years in the RV business. But it's the same thing. It's about building relationship. For there are very specific. They're looking for a certain floor plan. So that customer is different. On a car, it's a completely different in a way that you still want to build relationships, but this is a dependable transportation that people need to get from point A to point B on, right? Maybe they got 3 kids and need safety. The RV business is recreational. It's like a boat, right? It's something that people are going to use. The average RVer does 3,000 to 5,000 miles a year, and people say, why so low? Well, it's not your work car where you do 10 to 12,000 miles. It's your weekend, it's your week's vacation. And how far do you want to drive before you have some fun, right? If you drive across the United States, around 3,000 miles. So if you're doing a little shorter thing, it's going to be less miles. So, but it's still about making relationship. And it's very seldom, Pat, is the first visit the sale. Sometimes it's 2 or 3 visits. Sometimes it's a little more investigation, a little more research. It's a very competitive market. There's a lot of nice coaches out there. Today, it's 70% in the B vans, which are the, the Revels, the Storyteller Overlands, the real nice, under 20 feet, have a bathroom, maybe have a lithium battery pack. So the learning curve, I would say, in the RV business for me was about 10 months, and I'm still learning. And to me, it's fascinating, Pat. I just love that. And you find something that kind of intrigues you. And RVs, Winnebago's been around for 62 years making RVs. So it's part of the American culture. And it's fun, whether it's trailers, toy haulers, or whatever. It's still the fact that people buy from who they like. So part of our process, we have what's called the wheel. It's a 7-step process. Is you make a friend. You don't talk about price. You find out what folks are doing, where they're living, what they're going to do, whether they're going to take wait till the retirement. Kids are growing up. They want to have some fun. I felt fortunate. My folks had a trailer, 4 boys. We came in for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, but we slept outside in the tent. Mom and Dad got the trailer. Right. So, you incorporate, I think how sales have changed. If I look back on it, it's more of storytelling, but I still think there's some basic fundamentals, and the fundamentals are have a mental thought process that I'm going to make a sale. I'm going to close a deal today, get somebody to sign the paperwork, take a step in the right direction. I think it's also still about your first impression, right? How do you come across? And I think the little things today, if somebody tells you next week it's their anniversary, get them a card that says anniversary. Hey, by the way, Pat, your anniversary, right? Here's a little card, anniversary card. Or if it's the holidays, maybe a little box of chocolates to somebody who has done something special. I just want to say thank you for always being so kind to me when I walk in. Here's a box of chocolates with a card that says thank you from you. Just little things that separate you. When I pick somebody up at the airport who flies in from another state to buy an RV, they're always shocked I'm picking them up. I don't expect them to take Uber. I drive them. Hey, you got an hour? Do you want to stop off and get something to eat? Come back and pick them up. But it's all the little things that make the difference. I know it may not show up today, tomorrow, and there will be a lot of people in their careers who don't do that. But if you do all those, it's that little thing where the graph just goes up a little bit more, and you do a little bit more over the course of 15, 20 years. They go, how did you get there? It started here.
What's intriguing? Yeah, absolutely. What's intriguing about the industry you were just talking about, the organization you work for, Northern California, they're a pretty big organization, and there are other great RV companies around the area. So what would separate you from everybody else? The salespeople there, other organizations. What is it that you have that's going to convince me to buy that $200,000 to $300,000 vehicle?
So we're a family-owned business. The people have owned it we're just celebrating 50 years. We kind of do the Costco theory. So we have what's called ELP, everyday low price. When you walk into our facility, we're considered now the largest indoor showroom in the United States. Our prices are clearly posted everywhere. And so we went to that non-haggle environment where the price is the price. We don't discount it all. It's already discounted from MSRP. And then we buy in such quantity with 13 dealerships in the nation. We'll buy 100 at a time. So it's kind of almost like the Costco theory, where we have 100 this price. And when they're gone, they're gone. And the next price, unfortunately, with everything raising up, the prices are going up. But 100 sounds like a lot, but when you spread it over 13 dealers, it's not a lot. Our locations,
it's not a lot. Yeah, and plus, like you said earlier, is that what you're leading toward is like inventory is so critical to have that right inventory, because anybody can go to any RV lot and find something,
Right.
but it's not going to be, if you're going to spend that much money in RV, you want that relationship with the salesperson, because I got to trust you, man. I want to drop $200,000-$300,000. You better, make sure that you make some trustworthy statements to me, because I want to check you out. But it's the inventory, it's being positive and building that relationship still, because I love the story you tell about to most of these guys that buy an RV about, what they're buying, their earthquake on wheels. What was that story?
Oh, yeah. So Bob Tiffin, who owns Tiffin Motorhomes Company, is in his 80s. He just sold his company, but he used to say, now that would be the RV if you won the lottery and you came in and say, hey, what's one of the best RVs I can buy for an A class, looks like the bus, would be a Tiffin. He said on a podcast, and this is how he said, remember, we take a chassis and then we build a home on it, heating, air conditioning, plumbing, kitchen, sleeping area. And we go down the road and every day and have an earthquake. And he shook his hands like that. He said, there's going to be some issues. And you were like, oh my God. Well, it's true, right? There are going to be, just like your house, you're going to have to walk around every once in a while with a screwdriver. You're going to have to get some, screw this, tighten this falls off. It's the same thing in RV. And what happens is if you've had a couple, you're totally comfortable with that. But if it's your first time and you say that to somebody, their eyes, they're not made with robotics. They're not like cars. They're made in Red Bay, Alabama. They're made in Forest City, Iowa, Eckhart, Indiana. And when you fly out there and you go through the tour of the factories, it's guys like you and I. You're doing the plumbing. I'm doing the electrical. Mary's over there doing the seat upholstery. Somebody's doing the cabinetry. Somebody's laying down the floor. And the chassis are always a year behind. So if it's a 2022 model, the chassis is a 2021 model because it took a while to build the house on top of it.
Exactly. So, well, the honesty part of it, right, John? It's all about honesty and building that rapport with the customer. And if I were to hear that, if I were to drop that much money on an RV and you say, hey, listen, this, has potential of, having some issues, we're going to fix it. It's just part of living, right? So those are things that open people's eyes. So yeah, that's a good thing.
And I think like anything else, if you're a salesperson, you can set the expectations and inform people. Now they may not hear it, they may not register, but you let them know along the process. You're open, you're honest, you're forthright with them. Whether they buy from you or not, they still respect you. And then I think the other thing, Pat, with sales is that you go through the cycle of, I'm afraid to say I don't know versus I do know. I've had to say that enough that my ego doesn't get involved anymore. When I sold mattresses for Mattress Firm for 2 years, I got into that industry. They recruited me to go to sell mattresses, but it was a brick and mortar store. And I kind of thought maybe it's kind of like my old business I had. I kind of like that idea. But in the midst of working for them, they filed for bankruptcy. And so the things that they promised said to me, hey, John, we're not going to be opening stores, so we're going to be closing. Not sure this is where you want to be, but we'll put you at the #1 volume store, allow you to make some money. And they were great. But I realized if I was going to work those many hours, maybe I should go sell some high-end cars. And that's when I left to go work at Mercedes-Benz. And at that point, I thought maybe a different clientele, but sales are sales. Some people who buy $140,000 Mercedes-Benz will just call you up on the phone. Can you bring the contract by? Can you deliver the car? And I'll just write you a check. As funny as that seems, that happened all the time.
Yeah, it's amazing.
You drive up to somebody's house, outside of Sacramento. They write you a check.
Here are the keys.
Call. Yep. Do you want to go over? And I've had 3 or 4 of them. I'm good. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
So never think that there's a shortage of money. Never think money's the issue. Whether it's companies, there might be budgets, there might be buying cycles. I get all that. But never think that there's a tightness on money. Money flows and comes and goes. I've seen too much. Last month, 14.5 units, somewhere around 2 million in sales.
There's money out there.
There is.
That's a good point you make. And a lot of times you brought up the thing about objections, when customers have objections, and it's not always, a lot of times we hear the objections, but we just go, okay, well, your price is too high, whatever it is, tell me more about why that price is high. What do you feel is high about the price? And maybe they don't know. It's always the first thing out of their mouth. We do that in our sales, especially in our organization. It's always about, hey, your products are too high or whatever. And sometimes we just stop there as salespeople. We let that intimidate us or stop us in our tracks. But the ones that are successful will go, well, tell me more about that. Why does that affect your organization? So I know how to change that or talk to you about something. Because a lot of times it's not so much the objection, it's something underlying the objection, because there's money out there and people are very, very informed now with the internet. They know more or as much about your product as you do. So you have to be prepared. And I love the fact that even if you, like you said, with the mattresses, because I remember you leaving that company, you already had a sales job already lined up, but it was always sales, sales, sales. And that's where your heart is. So,
yeah. You know, and what I realized is when you're a business owner, you're doing a lot of things. And I will say this, I was a good salesperson. As a business owner, I was fairly okay. My accountant made me a better business person. And I remember that one of the business instructors at Sac State asked me to come talk to his MBA students. And I'm like, me? You know, why me? He said, John, you're doing it. I go, oh, no. I couldn't go. And that was way before Toastmasters. I kind of regret not doing that because I think it would have been good, because all the things I thought about business, and my dad owned a business. So he would always say, hey, we're going to have a conversation. And I'm being the oldest, I heard the most of it. And it doesn't leave this dining table, but talked about it took more work. And it wasn't something you got into and be the owner. When you're the owner, you're going to put in 80-hour work weeks. And I had 21 employees, 25 independent contractors, and we did a little over $6 million a year in sales. But it was full time. You know, after 15 years, I got burnt out. I got tired, right?
Yeah,
and so It's one of those things. And it was always a growth. And it was always, anytime you do something, you always want to surround yourself with people who say you can. When I opened the business in 94, there was only 2 people who thought it was a good idea. Everybody thought it was bad. When we did the remodel, my accountant said, just because you double your square footage doesn't mean you're going to double your sales. But exactly what we did. We more than doubled it. So I was always around. And when I got in the beauty industry, people thought it wasn't a good idea. And I'm glad I did. All the things that everybody said wasn't good turned out to be the best things in my life.
Right.
So you wonder why sometimes I get pumped up, and because I want people to believe in themselves. So when I passed over 50 a couple of years ago, I said this, I want to be the positive guy. Somebody said, I want to do this. I always say, when do you think about doing that? Don't judge it through your vision, judge it through their vision. It's their aspirations and dream. And if you're a good friend and a good leader and a good manager, you encourage them, ask them more information. Well, how are you going to make that happen? What do you need from me? How can I be there? So
empowering people. I want to, all great stuff. I want to leave the conversation on something about a success story you had, a very positive note on a success story you had. And you talked about it when the hair products day.
Yes. Yeah, so I would say a couple things. So when you build different territories, when you first start, you don't know, right? Those 4 stages, you're an unconscious incompetent. I don't know. Then you wake up one day and like, holy cow, what am I doing? I don't know this. Then you become a conscious competent. You have to think about it and you have to go through it. And then the final stages are as an unconscious competent. So you're not thinking about things, you're just clicking for you. So by the time I built the 4th territory, not only could I help somebody open a new salon, I would be there to have the equipment installed. We'd clean it, we'd set it up, and we'd be there. And you get a reputation of the rep that everybody doesn't want to compete against. Then what I did was to go after my competitors. I asked the company if I could give out little small appreciation plaques that say, you're the #1 Paul Mitchell person in this area. And so I would present it to them, and Pat, 99% of the time, the salon owner would tear up being recognized by a vendor that you're a #1 customer in this area. And they would put it right up in the front. So the other reps would come in and see this award given by your competitor. And it made me realize the more you do from somebody, the more that they will appreciate. They may never say thank you to you right away. It may be when you leave. It may be 3 or 4 years down the road when somebody picks up the phone and says, I never really appreciated what you did for me, but you were the best. I had an incident where I had a job when I was 15 in a little fast food Mexican restaurant in Chico called La Comida. And I love Mike Pavis. He was the owner. His son house now still has, it's been in business 50 years. It was 15 years later, I bumped into him at a golf course. I said, Mike Pavis. And he said, yes. I said, maybe you don't remember me, but I'm John McCain. I worked for you when I was 15. He says, best worker I ever had. I was shocked. He said, John, nobody worked harder than you did. And I don't know if he said that to everybody, but it made me realize. So later on in life, I would reach back to managers and people I work for and just said, I want to tell you how much I appreciate you were to me and what a mentor you were to me. And people are kind of taken back by that because you go back and you acknowledge people who did things. and you build that success, and people always know. So when you ask somebody for a favor, it's no problem. And same with me. When somebody has been good to me, what can I do to help out?
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that's with your same accounts too, how that matters, whether it's an individual buying an RV or somebody buying packaging from you, somebody who's your best customer. What can I do? The little things, just to say, I appreciate you, right? You're good to me. I enjoyed coming in and seeing you. I had A accounts that weren't very fun. I had C accounts that I loved that didn't do much business with us because they couldn't, because they weren't going to ever be an A account. But you just find a way to show appreciation. And that's what a salesperson does. You get invited to Christmas parties, you get because you're the positive person that shows up. You bring something, you help out when there's trouble,
Absolutely. It's the small things, right, John? And as you say, now I know with this, sales is a noble profession. No matter what people may think about it, it is a very noble profession, and you have to take it serious every day that you're on stage every day, just like anything you do. If you're going to be successful, like you have been very successful, and knowing your past, this is where you start. Never, ever give up. So Johnny Mac, John McCain, and I'm going to give everybody your email address in case they want to drop you some comments. It's JohnnyMac175@yahoo.com. And it's been a pleasure talking to you. And I've always enjoyed your positive attitude. Your hair looks great all the time too, by the way. But anyway,
thanks. Well, I got to say, I appreciate everything you do. And I hope some people get some inspiration by this. I felt fortunate. I know that when you're looking to pick your college courses, they don't have salesmanship down there, but I'm going to say this to everybody listening. If you've got 10,000 hours, that's 4.5 years in sales, you're considered a professional.
Right.
If you need more information, if you need help, go to YouTube, read a book. Last year I read 6 books. I can tell you this, I wasn't very much of a good book reader in high school and college, but I became one. I listened to it on tapes. I listened to it on audio. I listened to it on the way to work. Whether it's personal growth, salesmanship, motivation, if you can put yourself in there, you'll be a magnet. People will be drawn to you because you'll have that energy about yourself.
Yep. Johnny Mac, thank you very much. Appreciate all the
My pleasure,
time you
Pat.
had.
Thank you.
All right. Talk to you soon.